There are around 28 million human trafficking victims worldwide, in every country, in every city. But many people aren't talking about it. Who will speak up to set these captives free? Join us on the Freedom Project, where we talk about ways to fight back against trafficking in our local communities. We are the next generation. We are the change. Good morning and welcome back to the Freedom Project podcast. I'm your host, Kylie Glendenning, and this week we have a very special episode. We have a very special guest star, Gretl Crawford, the current Kennewick mayor. Today we're going to learn about her story of entering into local government, how our city is combating trafficking, and advice for aspiring young women who want to advocate for their passions entering into the world of politics. So Gretl, starting off, let's talk a little bit about your story. So how did you start in politics? What events kind of led you to getting involved in local government? And have you always dreamed of representing your community in leadership? Or was there like a certain event that happened that made you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so I guess my story would be I didn't necessarily plan on being in politics, but I've always been interested in politics. I would say when I was younger, I definitely probably somewhat thought I was maybe a feminist, and I was raised in a family of all girls, so it's kind of like anything a boy can do, girls can do too. So that was kind of my thought process, probably about into college. And then honestly, I kind of started realizing that the feminist movement was not my movement. In my opinion, it actually is what's kind of led to women not being protected, women not being, what's the word I'm looking for? Not being appreciated for those things that are innately female. We are nurturers, we are mothers, we are sisters, we are friends, and you know, now we have basically all have a huge drive to succeed in the home, succeed out of the home. There's so much pressures on women to be everything to everyone, and I'm actually very conservative, and in college is probably when it actually kind of went that way. My husband is actually more conservative than I was, but now I'm very much more outspoken than he was, and I think that's kind of how I got involved in politics, was mostly just because I was concerned. And then especially once you have children, then things become much more real when people start trying to make decisions for you that you know are going to affect your kids and future generations, especially if you think it's going to be adversely. So that's probably the beginning of it, and I was just always outspoken, and people kind of knew what my thoughts and policies were. And then when I was kind of approached to potentially run for city council, I'm sure that was the background story to it, and honestly I probably wouldn't have really considered it other than I'm just going to call them the atrocities of COVID really turned everyone's world upside down, and I felt if there was something that we could do here locally, then that was my opportunity. So that's how I ended up in politics.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story, Gretl. And it's really inspiring and great to know that there are mothers, there are women in our community, when they see a problem and they see that, you know, there needs to be some gaps that need to be filled in, they do step into that role to help just all of our, especially our future generations, our children. I know that's a big thing that we talk about on the Freedom Project podcast, is that we are the next generation. If there's going to be change, it has to start with us. Yep. And so kind of off of that, you know, kind of inspired you to be the mayor, and what vision do you have for our city's future?
Well, again, I don't know that I ever aspired to be the mayor, but I really enjoyed my other 6 council members, and I guess we thought that I was maybe just the best choice just to kind of lead the meetings and kind of keep us organized a little bit. We have the large, daunting task of finding a new city manager, so we did that. And city council is kind of interesting in terms of time too, because we have a lot of board meetings, and then we have the city council and workshop meetings every week, and we have a mixture of people that are still professionals and working a 40-hour week plus week oftentimes, and then we have some that are retired. So it's kind of been a nice combination of people that are retired kind of volunteer more for a lot of the ribbon cuttings and things within the community, and we just kind of share roles. But yeah, so the mayor is elected from the other city council members. So when I was elected in 2022, I was elected to mayor pro tem, which is kind of like the vice mayor. And then, so in the beginning of this year, a little bit into the fall of last year, I was elected as mayor at that point, and I'll have a 2-year term.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that. And I'm looking forward to seeing all that you do for our community and all the changes that we're going to see. It's going to be a positive improvement. Another question that I had was, you kind of entered into the world of politics and taking on that role, and you're a role model for many young women who also aspire to enter into politics. Well, who were your female role models, and how did they influence your career? Do you have any, or maybe if they weren't necessarily in politics, do you have any other female role models that were kind of in the spotlight growing up that you really looked up to?
Let's see, people always talk about this. I don't know that I actually have role models. I mean, Wonder Woman was probably one of the best role models. Someone that was a everyday person and then could spin in a circle and become a Wonder Woman and do everything. But I just really like strong, confident people. Politically, probably Ronald Reagan was probably kind of an icon that I like to go back to a lot of his quotes and a lot of his policies. I really liked. I think that was a good era for the United States. But I don't really have a female political person that I really like Kristi Noem right now. I think that she's doing a really good job. I think that she stands for the right values. I think that she fights for the workers, and truly things that will benefit the workers and not some of the short-sighted legislation that we have going on here in Washington, where we're limiting how many hours people can work a week and limiting the potential for their income and really hurting industries. And I think that sometimes we as females do get a little bit more emotional about things and maybe don't always think about the long-term consequences that might have on others or society. And I think that that's one thing that I've been conscientious of a lot more being in politics, was that it wasn't just me saying something, that I was representing a larger swath of people. And I think that I just needed to be more responsible with how I looked at things, the things that I said. And I think that a lot of females have the capacity to maybe just think something and say something, but maybe it might have some outcomes that are a little short-sighted in the long run. Men too. I'm not saying it's just females, but I think Kristi Noem is probably the current person that I kind of look to and think she's doing a really good job. And that would probably be it right now.
Yeah. So on July, not the 20th, that's our competition date, but on the 19th, Miss Tracy's itself has to interview. Kind of very similar to what I'm doing with you. So we have a panel of 5 judges, and lots of people, when they think of Miss America, they think, bikinis and high heels on stage, but we have definitely evolved past that. And so now it's more than a crown and a sash. You truly are advocating and trying to represent yourself for a job. They always tell you the crown is a microphone to stand on whatever advocacy that you're doing. Yeah. But one of the things that my coach tells me is, when you are in an interview, I want you to think of somebody kind of like your female role model, who you want to embody, like what is the, kind of the, I don't want to say vibe, it's not quite the right word, but the attitude that you want to give, like who's confident, who do you think of? And for me, what comes to mind when I hear you talk about that, especially in the world of politics, I don't love all of her takes, but I actually really admire Candace Owens. Like, I like that whenever she speaks, she's confident. She knows what she's talking about. She has a no-nonsense attitude. Yes. And she's not backing down. When she says something, she's going to stand on truth. And I really admire that. And that's what I hope to embody and show to the judges as well. So
I like that. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Candace Owens as well. And I think that is one thing, kind of like I was saying before, I often talk fast and my thoughts come quickly, and that's not always a good thing. Whereas Candace Owens, she's very well educated on the things that she speaks about, but she also speaks slowly and thinks about what she's going to say before she just says it, and you do a great job when you're interviewing people. So I think she'd be proud.
Well, thank you. Well, kind of going into it, our next question is kind of hitting on the area of trafficking. So we know that trafficking, it's in every nation, on every country in the world. And unfortunately, it has been a subculture in the Tri-Cities. Can you tell us about your experience, if you had any kind of touch points or maybe secondhand experience with trafficking and its effect on our community?
Sure. Well, the city of Kennewick has for a long time kind of been known for being an area that has a lot of sex trafficking crimes. I think, honestly, in the past, I've always heard it that, around the boat race weekend and some of those large festival type weekends, mostly. But honestly, in my own personal experience, I never really saw it or experienced. Sometimes, I would talk with my friends or groups and kind of be like, they always talk about this. I don't know where these things might happen. They're probably just happening, out in front of us. But wouldn't even know what to look for. And I think that we have had some issues in the city of Kennewick, and we've been really working towards trying to come up with some solutions within the city of Kennewick for some of the massage parlors. We passed some ordinances last year so that massage parlors in general could not operate past 9 p.m. and they couldn't open again in the morning until 7 a.m. because some of these massage parlors were staying up all night long, which is kind of odd for a regular business. But the other thing, again, kind of like I said before, sometimes when you try to make one area of society work better or behave, you sometimes end up hurting other areas. So we actually, before we passed that ordinance, had several legitimate massage companies that do therapeutic massage come in and say, you're going to hurt or hinder our businesses because we actually have people that work throughout the day, or professionals, or people that need to come in sometimes up until 10 o'clock. And so then we reconsidered and we said, okay, what are the hours that you typically work that we can make something, try to work for you, but also try to limit some of the bad businesses. And so we ended up passing it for no later than 10 p.m. and no earlier than 6 a.m. We also started earlier because I said some people come in before work. So that was one of the things we did. They have to have their business licenses, posted at the entry, and that person actually has to match the picture. So I guess that the insight that I have had into it has been from that investigation and some of the counts of the investigation, in addition to some first-hand interviews that I heard of some of the massage parlors. So it's been a little bit more eye-opening to me, and I think the frustrating part in some ways is that I'd love to see them all shut down tomorrow, but we kind of get some pushback because it's not the women that are being trafficked. They want to help and save them, but if they just go in and shut down all these massage parlors, what they're really kind of going after is the kingpins, we'll call them, or the top of the food chain, because as soon as they shut down each business, they just pop up somewhere else. So there were actually, the Kennewick Police Department was partnering with a statewide task force that had been working undercover for quite some time to try to unearth this kind of underground ring, because it really is it's a complete illegal operating ring that's international. They often bring them in over the Canadian border, and if they just take out the people that are in that massage parlor, oftentimes it's the women that are there. But when they had a couple of these raids, they did find some of the women and help to save them. But I think only a few of them actually ended up going with Mirror Ministries. They were afraid. Oftentimes they have something that they're holding over them with family, in regards to family. They'll tell them that they themselves are going to be, prosecuted or get in trouble. Most of them didn't speak any English. and some of them were even living in these massage parlors in, horrific conditions. So it is a horrifying underworld that most people, I think, don't know exists, and there's probably way more of it. And I have been pushing to continue, trying to shut them down, and I don't want them in Kennewick. But again, I do understand that these are just kind of the lower echelons of the whole syndicate, and unless they take out some of the top tiers first, then we're really just kind of putting a band-aid on things. So it's kind of a multifaceted situation that's a little difficult, I think, for everyone to kind of police right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I have so many thoughts when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And so one of those being that I'm just so glad that, you being the mayor are informed about what's going on in our community. I think so many individuals sometimes, especially when it comes to uncomfortable topics like this, they're like, well, is our civic government, is our local government even aware? And just hearing you speak, I'm so glad that you are informed and you do know what's going on. And personally, coming from somebody who advocates for trafficking, I think you handled it very well. You kind of find this hard balance between how do you help combat trafficking while also still maintaining the integrity of businesses and helping them succeed. So I think, that's, kudos to you for finding a hard balance in the middle of something that is difficult to navigate. And so I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how does our city partner with law enforcement to kind of help in those anti-trafficking efforts? Can you give us a little snippet of that?
Sure. So the Kennewick, we changed as city council, the legal department for the city brought us new code amendment changes. So the city attorney's office, the city manager's office, and then the police department, and then the city council ultimately votes on it, and then we put those into law. So those are the new ordinances that require that, that the new operating hours, that they have to be licensed. And then we continue to kind of change things as we can and then again, when we go in and they want to make an arrest, they also want to make it stick, right? So they don't want to go in and just thinking that something might be an illegal massage parlor doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a conviction. And then the other issue that we not only have right now, but it's going to get even worse, there's some legislation within Washington State with the Office of Public Defenders, which is trying to, again, like I said earlier, limit the hours that public defenders put in. They think that they're overworked. And while that's an interesting concept from a national survey that was done, not of Washington State, and it had a lot of weight leaning heavily on felonies, not just misdemeanors. So misdemeanors is like a traffic ticket, or they're the smaller infractions that you get tickets for. But we have such a backlog. I think you've seen maybe in the paper recently where there was a rapist let go recently, a man, first-degree burglary, robbery. This is going to be happening more and more frequently, and justice denied, or justice not served is justice denied. So if we are not giving people a timely opportunity to get in front of a judge and have their case be heard, then we're no longer going to have a justice system. And so when we go in to the massage parlors and they make arrests, again, they want to arrest the people that are actually criminal and criminalizing these women, not the women that are being, held or working there most times against their will. So it's that fine line, but society has definitely changed a lot. I would say, just even within the last 5 or 6 years, I think that COVID was a turning point that kind of opened the floodgates for a lot of societal issues that are not going away and are only going to get worse. It's really emboldened criminal behavior. And I think at the end of the day, I heard somebody talking about it recently, that it's, there's people talk about climate activism or social activism, and it sounds really cool to become part of a group and talk really loud about something. But we need to, as citizens, as each and every one of us, be better people ourselves, and we need to hold the people around us accountable to be better people as well. And I think in this day and age, that's really the only thing that's going to save us, because social activism and things that people, when we're not taking care of ourselves, and when we have people in societies that are unhealthy, but yet they're making rules and regulations and telling others how they should be acting, it's a very dangerous place to be, and I think that's where we're at right now. I think that people have a hard time turning and looking inward at themselves and really being honest about maybe their own behaviors. And that's kind of what I did actually when I became mayor. You know, I became a little bit more cognizant of just blurting something out that maybe I thought or I heard, because I know that words do have consequences, and I was in a position, you know, where I had to stand behind it, and it put the city at risk if, you know, you do or say something that maybe otherwise as a private individual you may not be so worried about, but there's consequences for everything that we do, good and bad. And if we can all be better people to one another, just be better people in general in society, then we can thwart some of this criminal behavior and not just look the other way. When people are hurting, I mean, the homeless issue in our city, you know, we try. There's a lot of outreach that goes into it, and there are programs that people can go into, but ultimately, you know, those people have to change. They're sick, they need healing, they need therapy, you know.
Jesus.
Yeah, they need Jesus, and we have some great therapeutic courts that have held them accountable, and they have turned their lives around and become, you know, responsible citizens again. But we don't have enough Jesus. We don't have enough real truth. We have Instagram truth. We have Facebook truth. We don't hold each other accountable. We don't call something wrong.
Yeah.
We keep making up new words. Our communities are in danger, not from the outside, but from the inside. We can save ourselves one person at a time from within our communities, and I think that's what I like to see the most, is just our region as a whole. I think that's one of the things as being mayor that's been really uplifting to me, is just seeing all of the people from all of the areas and regions, and it doesn't matter what city you live in, if it's Pasco or Richland or Kennewick, you know, when we come together to work together for the greater good, that's when really good things happen, and we just have a great community, and that's why I'm proud to live in Kennewick and also in this community, and we just have to keep helping each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that kind of brings to mind my pastor always talks about you need a backbone of steel. You need a backbone of steel, especially in this day and age. Yeah, we have really the redefinition of so many things has led to just so many like mental health crisis. And personally, I see in my own generation, there's an identity crisis issue with so many individuals that's leading into mental health and all of these, branching problems from the root of like, this is an identity issue. You don't know who you are or whose image you are made in, and now it's branching off in all these different directions. So it's good to just know that you are solid in that, and you know the direction that Kennewick needs to go in, and that's how you help just not only sex trafficked individuals, but partnering with every person to make it work cohesively, also knowing how to problem solve and how to reconcile with those things. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, which kind of touches on this subject, what is the most important thing that you've learned while working in government and mayor?
Let's see, the most important thing. Well, I guess I actually have a larger newfound, respect for all of the entities that really do work under the headline of, city government. And there's often times where I think of government and I think that we need way less government in general. And I think that's true from more of a state and a federal bureaucratic level. But here at the city level, I mean, we have, I think it's 9 departments under the city manager. And there's police department, fire department, there's the public works, which makes sure that we have clean drinking water, sanitation, stormwater systems in place. They keep the roads clear in the winter. They, traffic lights, signage throughout the city. And then we have the legal department, who again works with the police department and the council to make sure that we have the ordinances and the laws on the books, and that we're prosecuting people and holding people accountable. We have our utility building and just kind of our general making the city, go around, taking care of all of the paperwork and citizen issues and complaints. We have the building and planning department. We have an IT department, which not only helps with all of the departments within the city, but the police department and the fire department both have extensive broadcasting systems that they have to keep up to date, and they have public records that they have to maintain. They're also responsible, let's see, I'm trying to think, our finance department. I mean, we have, our budget is, I can't even think if it's 400 million biannual, or is it annual? But it's a massive, I mean, it is a huge business, and people get upset about property taxes, but the reality about most city, the money that cities bring in, they only get small portions of sales tax and portions of property tax. And we really, and the Parks and Recreation Department is under the city. They really do a lot on really not that much. They have over 400 employees to do all of those different departments and divisions, and they work really hard on oftentimes pretty constrained resources, and we just hope that we'll get some state or federal grants for things. But I think it's just the intricacies of the city, the services that we do rely on all the time that I think are important to us. I think that the worst part, I think, of government waste is not necessarily in the cities. It's more federally, the stuff that we see maybe going overseas to people that didn't earn it, that didn't work for it, and they're taking our money, and we often kind of wonder why when you're at the checkout counter and your price of your food is just doubled, and you're having trouble making ends meet. And I feel like we should be taking care of our communities and probably our own country first.
Yep. Preach it, sister. America first. Live in America, America first.
Yeah.
So another question that I had for you was, how has working in business, I see, I kind of Googled you before I talked with you, and you own a successful business in, making all these beautiful homes and things like that. How has working in this business, having this background, really prepared you for handling the demands as Kennewick mayor? I'm sure that it's been very helpful in a lot of different areas.
Well, yeah, I think overall, I understand basically, again, the city's kind of run like a business, although they're not necessarily a for-profit business. They are basically just trying to make ends meet. But when it comes to business decisions that need to be made, we do a lot of zoning. We make a lot of decisions on zoning changes, property changes, development, and being in construction and some development. And I have a pretty good idea of the background in that to be able to make good decisions, hopefully good decisions for the city, and hopefully ask the right questions when we go through those things. We've had, we had one example of a opportunity that the city kind of had to expand some of their resources and infrastructure, and there were some county folks that lived adjacent to some of the facilities that the city kind of wanted or needed, and there was a request to change the zoning, but it really would have limited their ownership of their property and what they could do with it. And it was next to the sewage waste plant, and a lot of individuals might just think, well, it doesn't really matter, nobody really wants to live there either. And I can tell you for a fact, those citizens, which they were actually county residents, they weren't even city residents, so we couldn't totally help them exactly in what they wanted to do, but we could set the tone so that the county could help them. And but the city kind of wanted to do what they thought was right, for the city and some of their expansion projects. And again, assuming that people didn't necessarily want to live next to an expanding sewage treatment plant. And so, they were doing their job, but in the end, we voted with the people and the property rights of individuals, and oftentimes people that don't really have, a voice. They weren't necessarily high-income wage earners, but they had some individuals that were huge advocates for all of the citizens, and they banded together and told us that they were important too, and they have property rights, and a lot of this, that was their legacy that they could maybe pass on to their kids. And if we would have changed the zoning and passed the law, they never would have been able to do any additional remodels on their existing structure. If a fire would have burned down their house, they wouldn't be able to rebuild again. So, again, the short-sighted concept of passing laws that might sound good, they have effects on everyone. And so we all have to make sure that we're making the right decisions. So again, prayer comes in handy because I don't necessarily know what all the answers are. And, we have a lot of good discussions, but we need to take care of each other and sometimes pray a little bit for making the right decisions for the long term for the community, but then also for individuals too. So,
like, see why they made you mayor. It's pretty awesome. It's super sweet. Just to truly, before this, I've gone to, I think, one city council meeting, I think, before, but I've never really been able to talk, especially with the mayor. You're the first mayor I've met. But it's really sweet just to hear it's not what a lot of the media makes it seem as, like, top individuals say, could care less and they're all about money. It's like, no, you're a real person and you have, like, real thoughts and you care about people and you want to do right by people. And so it's just sweet to, like, really hear and sit and reflect. And, like, that's awesome to know that our local city council is listening to us, even those who don't necessarily live in the city limits.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yeah.
So I think the one thing I would say is that there's all different sizes of cities and places in cities, but I do think that term limits are very important. And I think that part of the issue is that when you take, our state Senate, our state House of Representatives, they go to Olympia when they're in their session, and they come back to their communities, so they get to talk to their constituents when they come back. When we send our federal senators and House representatives, they go and they pretty much live in DC. And I think that becomes a big difference when you have been a politician or a congressman or for so long. There's so many lobbyists, there's so many pressures. It used to be in the beginning that you could only, these were people that, like me, that had a business, and they would take a little bit of a leave of absence and go and do, what was right for their communities, but then come back to their communities and they're accountable to their communities, they live in their communities. That's not what happens anymore. And I think that that's one of the biggest sources of where some of our issues come from, is that when you have people across the country that are making decisions for our state and Washington, if you want to breach the dams here because it's just some little waterway somewhere where you have no idea, you don't care about all the farmers that it supports, you don't care about the waterways and the carbon-free waterways that we have to push all of our produce forward that feeds this nation and many others. And that's, I think, the real true issue is when politicians become politicians. Like I said, I didn't start this to become a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I just want to be a good person that's helping my community. And I think if we enacted term limits again, we would see more of that come back to light. There's too much power in people that maintain seats for too long and completely enrich themselves on the backs of the American people while giving our hard-earned dollars away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the difference between being a leader and a boss, for sure. Another question that I had for you, and thank you for responding to that, was how can local governments support young women aspiring to political careers? And this kind of shifting topics a little bit, but really, what can the city of Kennewick do? What can federally? What can we do to just support young women as they step into these spheres where usually kind of is a male-dominated career field?
Well, I don't know that there's necessarily, one thing that you could say government can do. I think that statement or that thought process is somewhat what's kind of put us in some of the positions where we're in, where we talk about affirmative action and we talk about putting people in positions just so we can have this gender or this race or this. I think that I'm only the second female mayor in the city of Kennewick, and I don't know how many other female council members there have been, probably not a whole lot, but I think that anyone has the opportunity to. I think that it is about what you do outside of business. I think it's what you do within the community. There's leadership programs. There's, Tri-City leadership. I think, getting involved in pageants like you're doing. I think that one of the things that when I was approached, and one of the things I talk about, one of the things is name recognition. So it is difficult probably for just individual that doesn't have maybe a name recognition, but you can go door to door. I think you can do whatever you want to do in life. I don't think it's about what other people have to do for you, but I think if we're helping each other, we're lifting each other up, I think that's all that we can ask for at the end of the day. I think we need to stop trying to create, pockets. I think it's good to lift people up. I just don't know exactly what the answer would be when you say, what could the city do or other people do? I think civics classes would be great. I think that the more people knew about the Constitution, I think that the more that people just really educate themselves on our history, I think that gives you a huge leg up and makes you way smarter because you're actually being educated in real true history, and history repeats itself. So if you're just paying attention to Facebook and Instagram and whatever your friends might be saying, or the loudest person in the room might be saying, then I think you're going to have difficulty probably all the way through. So I think if there's anything, I think you look to yourself, you look from within, you figure out why you want to do it, you study, you become an authority in and of yourself, and then you just go to council meeting, you start meeting people, and you start becoming engaged in the world or the business that you want to live in. That's what I did in construction. I didn't have a background in construction. I just took every opportunity that I could to learn things, and I just kept stepping up the ladder.
So really educating yourself and applying yourself, just stepping into what your passion is. I really love that. And so kind of near to our last questions, this podcast itself, if you're not aware, it was created to spread awareness of human trafficking as part of what we call a CSI. It's my community service initiative. It's for the Miss America organization, and that is just like a pageant to finance higher education. And that's basically just a scholarship pageant to finance higher education and encourage young women to advocate for their passions. And the cool thing about it is many title holders, whether it's mental health, disability awareness, or even trafficking, they'll go on to speak at their state capitals and even lobby to get certain bills passed. I know there's been, off the top of my head, like 2 gals that, I don't remember the community service initiative, but I know that they did get those laws passed as part of what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And so kind of with that in mind, concerning just empowering young women to pursue involvement in their passions, and maybe that is politics, how can we engage schools and colleges in promoting political awareness among girls? I know it's kind of piggybacking off that question, and really I think especially because it's an election year, that kind of veers towards how to get more people to vote when all they do is watch TikTok and Instagram, they Snapchat. And I know personally that I've had multiple acquaintances that I hear it's just so dramatic, it's just so messy, I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm just not going to vote. I'm just not going to get involved. But then, I forget what it's called. There's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you don't do anything, and then what you don't want to happen happens, and you kind of wrote it out for yourself.
Yeah. Well, so I think what you're doing and what these pageants do, one is it kind of gives you a platform, right? So you are able to have a voice, not only for yourself, but you can have the voice for other people too. If you really feel led towards some sort of a foundation or something, then someone like you who has a platform and has a voice, you have the biggest opportunity to be able to do good and to change. I think politics is something that used to be a kind of a much dirtier word than what it is now. Now it's used a lot more, but it's just become very divisive because it's not anymore about who you are and who I am. It's, are you a Republican, are you a Democrat? And I think that that's actually part of what's been pushed to the downfall of our detriment and the organization, because now we're controlled by those parties and we're also defined by those parties. So I think we have to stop defining ourselves necessarily by those parties and stop allowing legislators, to make us commit to, if we're a Republican or a Democrat on our ballots, we need to have in-person voting so our votes count, because our votes do count. And I think sometimes I thought about it, kind of makes more of a difference when I think that when things are going okay, people don't really care that much about politics. But when it's obviously so divisive and they're worried about it so much that they're arguing all the time in public or on Facebook, then you do have an opinion, and your vote does matter. And when we're letting in all of these people that don't have any sort of history, don't have any stake in America, don't have generations, or things that we're willing to stay and fight for, and we want to maintain and save our communities, that if those people are allowed to vote, that one person will negate your vote.
Yep.
And that's huge, because if you don't have your voice, you're the only one that will have your voice. You are beautifully and wonderfully made. Every person is beautifully and wonderfully made, but I don't think people believe that anymore. They just believe that they're just kind of like part of the crowd, and the individuality has kind of gone out, the uniqueness. But Americans are unique, and America has been a country that a lot like to shun, but I don't think they know really what the differences are. And I can tell you that a lot of the people streaming in from under the border, for whatever reason they're coming here for, they absolutely know the difference between what America is or has the opportunity to be and where they came from. And we just take it for granted every single day. And I just think we have to stop taking things for granted, because I think we've already seen how, again, COVID, that we aren't in charge anymore. Others are in charge of us. And we're the only ones who can take that back. So I would definitely say everyone needs to vote. And regardless of how they're voting, I would hope that they would educate themselves before they vote. But it is your right. It's your right as an American citizen. I don't think that non-citizens should be voting.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that, then you are giving away your rights. You're giving away your votes. And if you really don't even care enough to vote, you should not be telling others what they should or shouldn't do, or engaging in political conversations as if you actually care. Because if you're not voting, you just really don't care that much, I don't think, because that is the way to change things. So.
Yeah, my parents would always talk about, at the end of the day, Kylie, you're the one who's paying your taxes. And so people who are not from here are voting, they're not paying taxes anyway, so it's your dollars.
And they're receiving our benefits.
Absolutely. So the last question that I have today is that if you could give one piece of advice to a young woman who wants to get involved in politics and pursue her passions, maybe that is in the world of politics or it's somewhere else, maybe it's in construction, in a business, she wants to be an entrepreneur, or maybe she even wants to advocate for anti-trafficking efforts, but they don't know where to get started, or maybe they lack the confidence, what advice would you give them?
Well, there were several different things that you did. I think if you're interested in politics or leadership type things, then I think you should get involved in leadership within your school. Again, I think civics is a great class, but I think that you really need to be looking for opportunities and then joining groups, being around like-minded people. There's tons of volunteer opportunities within communities, especially for disadvantaged groups that are looking for help. We have such a mental health crisis everywhere, and I think the earlier that we can start working with young people, the better. But if you're a young person and you're looking to get out there, I would look for organizations where you think that you can be a part of something, but find a mentor. Find somebody that can help to guide you and lead you a little bit, and talk you through some of their past experiences. So kind of lead you that way. But I think it is really hard walking alone, and there's a lot of people that walk alone. And I believe that if you have true faith, you're never truly walking alone. But you still need people here in the here and now to be there for you, to help guide you and maybe be a mentor and keep reminding that you're important and that you're strong and that you're brave and you're worthy of whatever you want to do, because I still think that in the United States there's opportunity to pretty much be whatever you want if you're willing to put the effort into. I think that people are just young people have been raised differently, and there's definitely a divide between, I think, those that have the get up and go and the drive to go and get something done and be held accountable for things and want to be accountable for things, and people who maybe are more interested in playing video games and just sitting and relaxing and hoping that others will pick up the slack or do things for them. And it's going to be really difficult in the years to come. It's already something that I see a lot in business and in the workplace, and expectations of young people versus expectations of older people that have been working for a long time and know what it takes to get things done and run businesses and stay employed.
So part of my story, kind of in our very first episode, I talked about why we started this podcast and why I even chose trafficking. Well, I am a first-generation American. My mom and her whole family immigrated from Mexico, and they would tell me all the time, it's like, you don't even understand, Kylie. You have no concept because you're American. You're automatically privileged. So I know that word's thrown around a lot, but it's like you have rights. You don't understand what it's like not to have a phone, or not to have access to clean water, or to have to literally go to a well to pump. Like, you turn on the faucet and water comes out, and not only does it come out, but it's clear, and it doesn't have any kind of taste. And they would just tell me that when you're going through life, like, you need to give it 110%. Like, you got to get some skin in the game. Like, things are important, so you need to work hard. And kind of relating to that, my dad would talk about taxes and trying to explain to me the concept. He say, because they always, even in school, they encouraged me to work hard. So I had goals. I want to be valedictorian. And they say, well, imagine, Kylie, that you worked really hard and you wrote an essay and you got an A on that test. And your buddy kind of comes up and, he's not really studying. He doesn't really care. He likes sports and stuff. And nothing wrong with sports. So he just didn't study. And he gets a D. And your professor's like, okay, I see this. It's not fair. So I'm going to give you guys both a B. I'd be so mad. Like, what do you mean? Like, I worked for the A, it's mine. Yeah. And so that's kind of how he explained taxes to me as a child. And I think that lesson needs to be taught to a lot more of my generation. But I think that there's an importance in working hard and having some pride, like in your self-appearance and the way that you present yourself and the way that you carry yourself. And I think that every person my age should strive to have a good reputation, not only from their friends, but from their employers and their teachers and anyone that they have a touch point and contact with in their life. That, should try to be a good person and the best role model that they can be. But we do see a lack of that. So, but I'm hoping that, especially with things like this, and the initiatives that you have and you're implementing in our community, and like-minded people like you are being a mentor to people my age and helping that whole mental health crisis, which I personally feel is rooted in identity issues. Mm-hmm. But I know that
I think family too.
Yeah, family.
Lack of family. So one of the things too that like the chief of police, gave me a few things that they do within the community, and I just want to read a couple because they're legitimate. But the effects on human trafficking on our community, social impact, community safety, so the increase in crime rates, and just a general sense of insecurity. Public health, spread of diseases, mental health issues, and substance abuse among victims. Family disruption, the trauma and the loss experienced by families of victims. Economic impact, workforce exploitation, so loss of legitimate job opportunities and exploitation of local labor. Resource strain, increased demand on social services, healthcare, and law enforcement. Economic instability, undermining local businesses and economic growth through illegal activities. Centered around large community events, it's not uncommon for human trafficking to increase during large community events, such as the boat races. But then also cultural impact, community cohesion, erosion of trust within the community, and increased social fragmentation. Human rights violations, undermining of human rights principles and values within the community. And I just think that in the last couple of generations, again, feminism, women thinking that they don't need men. I can do it all. It's a farce. You maybe can get through every single day, and maybe you're putting food on the table, and maybe the kids don't die, But there is something that that woman is lacking, and there is something that those kids are lacking, and there's definitely something that the father is lacking and not being able to be with their children and raise their children. The family unit is what keeps people out of abject poverty, is what keeps teens, young people, and even single women safe from abuse. And we have overlooked it for too long. We have to go back and take back our families and our communities and caring for each other.
Yep, bring back fathers.
Yeah.
Read your guys' Bible. Go back to church.
Yeah.
You guys all need it.
Yeah.
I wanted to say thank you so much, Gretl, just for meeting with me and talking with me. It's been such a privilege, especially because I have never talked with a mayor before and had a personal one-on-one conversation, and just really hearing your values and the things that you stand on. I know that Kennewick's in good hands, and hopefully that attitude and that mindset and drive continues to infiltrate our community, and we do bring back fathers, and we do bring back cohesiveness and the striving to be a good example to others, and not entitled attitudes. And so I'm hoping that we just will see all the effects that you bring for generations to come. And so I'm just really thankful that you're here and that you're able to take some time out of your very busy schedule and meet with me. If you guys would like to learn more about human trafficking and ways that you can get involved to help stop trafficking in your local community, be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Freedom Project TC for Tri-Cities. Again, that is The Freedom Project TC. And make sure to follow us on the Freedom Project podcast so you don't miss an episode anytime that we upload. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Go forth and be the change.